All right, here with Mr. John Weeks once again. Last chapter of Rules for Radicals called The Way Ahead. What's going on, brother?
All good things. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're gonna knock this out. Like we were talking about a while ago. We're gonna have to find something else to do. I don't know. We'll figure out something. I was looking at, have you
Oh,
heard of this?
definitely.
What was it called? Let's see if I can figure out. It was like surveillance something, surveillance pricing. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Okay, so apparently California is going through a lawsuit over this right now. What they're doing is they're taking all your metadata that's collected from your phone by the phone company. They're seeing what your habits are, what you buy, how much you spend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're adapting prices to your area based upon what the average is, what they think the people in that area will put up with as far as prices, like prices of gas, prices of eggs, blah blah blah. They fluctuate it based upon what area you live in, depending on what they think you may pay for it, based upon living in a certain area. So whereas you might like, I'd go down like, and just for instance, I'll go down to my market basket down the road and I could buy, let's say I could buy eggs there, like I get 18 eggs for $5. But then if I go to the market basket up in Orange, like 10 minutes away, it would be like $8 instead of the five because those people there might spend more, might be willing to spend more on products than we are here in Mauriceville.
I have heard of the term surveillance capitalism, but I didn't know that's what it meant.
Yeah, yeah. I was I was sitting at a restaurant yesterday waiting on food, and I just happened to look up at the screen, and there was a news story about it, and I was like, "What is that?" So I just kind of like started looking into it a little bit. I haven't done like a real deep dive into it, but I was looking at it a little bit. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of creepy, man." Like even if it is good for like the more impoverished people to, save them some money and not spend as much money on food or whatever. There's something just so creepy about it. It gives me the heebie-jeebies, man.
Same.
Yeah. So,
I'd be interested to hear your critique of it when you learn more about it because I can see like the pro capitalist libertarian side to it. But
mm,
at the same time, I can see the libertarian critique of state power. I'm sure the state is mixed up in it. And then I can see sort of like a conservative like Aaron McIntyre being like, this is why we have the state to protect us from stuff like this.
yeah.
I can see the different lines of potential thought and argument.
I haven't gotten beyond it just giving me the creeps. Like I just,
Yeah, me too.
I don't like the whole surveillance thing. I was talking to Beatrix about that the other day about like when we moved to Cape Town, I'm getting rid of my phone. I'm not carrying a phone anymore. I'm just I'll be done with it. I'll be like, I'll have my laptop and I can do my podcasting and writing on my laptop, but I'm not going to be carrying a surveillance device around with me all the damn time.
Targeting device.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's unfortunate too because like now it's like expected that you have it. So if I got rid of my phone right now, my job would freak out. They'd be like, "How are we supposed to reach you?" I'm like, "If you want me to have a phone, give me a fucking phone." Like that's how they used to do it, right? So, I mean, why do I have to pay for your access to me? If you want access to me, you pay for it. They keep telling me like, "Oh, download this app onto your phone." I'm like, "When are you going to start paying the bill?" Like if like half the crap on my phone is work related, like why aren't you paying the bill? You know? It's just weird.
I used to work for a corporation
Mm.
and I had to use my cell phone to make calls. And then my boss was like, yeah, so there's like this new program where either the company will give you a phone or they'll pay your phone bill. And I was like, awesome. So then I got the like email about it and I'm reading through it. And I'm like, oh, not awesome. Because now they're just going to have massive like surveillance on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, let's do it. I'll just do it on my phone.
Mm.
But yeah, if they want me to do increasingly crazy stuff with a phone, yeah, I prefer they give me a phone, even if they're going to have like keystroke access, because I'm just going to be using it for work. And it's funny you bring that up because in the last episode of Provoked with the greats Scott Horton and Marmy Daryl Cooper, they
Mm-hmm.
brought up a book by Carol Quigley called something like Weapon Systems and Political Structure. And the basic idea was like the you can track the history of weapons platform technology with the types of polities and states that you get. But I bet there's also a corollary with surveillance technology.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Mm. I never read Tragedy and Hope. That thing's a freaking monstrous book, and I've just never taken the time. But I did read like the Cliff Notes version, like Tragedy and Hope 101, where it's like some dude just like basically just summarizes it for you. And I listened to that audiobook, and that guy was into some weird stuff. That dude was he was very much a globalist from like the vein of like Cecil Rhodes, the Big New Brzezinski style like thought. And he was Bill Clinton's professor in college. And so it's you can definitely see his impact on the United States whenever you start discovering the like the different globalist kind of aspirations he had and how he didn't really believe in a nationalism or a national identity. So, but, but I haven't read anything else by him or heard of anything else by him, so I might have to check that out.
I definitely want to check that book out.
Yeah, this sounds interesting. I want to read this one. I haven't, I started it and then I put it down and then I start it and I put it down and it's, let me see. I think it's right here. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the American Black Chamber. So this was, about the programs that the United States was using before they came up with the NSA.
Whoa.
And how they were writing code and you know deciphering code and all that good jazz. But it's when every major nation of the world is doing their best to spy on each other and to break each other's secret codes, it is difficult to believe that there was once a U.S. Secretary of State who declared, "Gentlemen, do not read each other's mail." Yet it was this statement by U.S. Secretary of State Henry Stimson in 1929 that led to this book because the result was that the chief codebreaker for the USA, Herbert Yardley, lost his job and was cast out on the streets. Having no way to make a living other than playing poker, Yardley decided to pick up some cash by writing this book, which proved to be a great success. So, so yeah, it's all
Whoa.
about the code and stuff. What do they call it? Calligraphy or whatever they call that crap. I don't know much about it. But like I said, I've picked it up and I've read like the first chapter and then put it down, and I'll pick it up again a few months later and I'll start reading through it. But I never sat down and read the whole thing. I ordered it
The Black
on,
Chamber.
yeah, you can find it. It's free online. It's the American Black Chamber. You can find the PDF online. But that's one I've kind of looked at, wanting to get into, but I just haven't taken the time to do it. But I guess we should read this. I'm sitting here with this big ass text on my screen. I haven't read a word of it yet. Uh, so, the way ahead. Organization for Action will now and in the decade ahead center upon America's white middle class. That is where the power is. When more than three-fourths of our people, from both the point of view of economics and of their self identification, are middle class, it is obvious that their action or inaction will determine the direction of change. Large parts of the middle class, the silent majority, must be activated. Action and articulation are one, as are silence and surrender. We are belatedly beginning to understand this, to know that even if all the low income parts of our population were organized, all the blacks, Mexican Americans, Teddy Roosevelt would say there's no such thing as a hyphenated American, just to let you know, sir. Puerto Ricans, Appalachian poor whites, why isn't that hyphenated? If through some genius of organization they were all united in a coalition, it would not be powerful enough to get significant basic needed changes. It would have to do what all minority organizations, small nations, labor unions, political parties, or anything small must do: seek out allies. The pragmatics of power will not allow any alternative. The only potential allies for America's poor would be in various organized sectors of the middle class. We have seen Cesar Chavez migrant farm workers turn to the middle class with their grape boycott. In the fight against Eastman Kodak, the blacks of Rochester, New York, turned to the middle class and their proxies. Activists and radicals on and off our college campuses, people who are committed to change, must make a complete turnabout. With rare exceptions, our activists and radicals are products of and rebels against our middle class society. All rebels must attack the power states in their society. Our rebels have contemptuously rejected the values and way of life of the middle class. They have stigmatized it as materialistic, decadent, bourgeois, degenerate, imperialistic, warmongering, brutalized, and corrupt. They are right. But we must begin from where we are if we are to build power for change. And the power in the people are in the big middle class majority. Therefore, it is useless self indulgence for an activist to put his past behind him. Instead, he should realize the priceless value of his middle class experience. His middle class identity, his familiarity with the values and problems are invaluable for organization of his own people. He has the background to go back, examine, and try to understand the middle class way. Now he has a compelling reason to know, for he must know if he is to organize. He must know so he can be effective in communication, tactics, creating issues, and organization. He will look very differently upon his parents, their friends, and their way of life. Instead of the infantile dramatics of rejection, he will now begin to dissect and examine that way of life as he never has before. He will know that a square is no longer to be dismissed as such. Instead, his own approach must be square enough to get the action started, turning back to the middle class as an organizer. He will find that everything now has a different meaning and purpose. He learns to view actions outside of the experience of people as serving only to confuse and antagonize them. He begins to understand the differences in value definition of the older generation regarding the privilege of college experience and their current reaction to the tactics a sizable minority of students uses in campus rebellions. He discovers what their definition of the police is and their language. He discards the rhetoric that always says pig. Instead of hostile rejection, he is seeking bridges of communication and unity over the gaps, generation, value, or others. He will view with strategic sensitivity the nature of middle class behavior with its hang ups over rudeness or aggressive, insulting, profane actions. All this and more must be grasped and used to radicalize parts of the middle class. So basically, he just said he will not use X because that's all X is. It's just rude. The rough category middle class can be broken down into three groups: lower middle class with incomes from 6,000 to 11,000, middle class 12,000 to 20,000, and upper middle class 20,000 to 35,000. I'm a billionaire compared to these prices. There are marked
Damn tycoon.
Yeah, right. I should I should have a Lamborghini yacht by now. There are marked cultural differences between the lower middle class and the rest of the middle class. In the lower middle class, we encounter people who have struggled all their lives for what relatively little they have. With a few exceptions, such as teachers, they have never gone beyond high school. They have been committed to the values of success, getting ahead, security, having their own home, auto, color TV, and friends. Their lives have been 90% unfulfilled dreams. To escape their frustration, they grasp at a last hope that their children will get that college education and realize those unfulfilled dreams. They are a fearful people who feel threatened from all sides. The nightmare of pending retirement and old age with a Social Security decimated by inflation, the shadow of unemployment from a slumping economy with blacks already fearsome because the culture's conflict, threatening job competition, the high cost of long term illness, and finally, with mortgages outstanding, they dread the possibility of property devaluation from non whites moving into their neighborhood. They are beset by taxes on incomes, food, real estate, and automobiles at all levels, city, state, and national. Seduced by their values into installment buying, they find themselves barely able to meet long term payments, let alone the current cost of living. Victimized by TV commercials with their fraudulent claims for food and medical products, they watch the news between the commercial with Senate committee hearings showing that the purchase of these products is largely a waste of their hard earned money. Repeated financial crises result from accidents that they thought they were insured against, only to experience the fine print evasions of one of our most shocking confidence rackets of today, the insurance racket. Their pleasures are simple: gardening a tiny backyard behind a small house, bungalow, or ticky tacky in a monotonous subdivision on the fringe of suburbs, going on a Sunday drive out to the country, having a once a week dinner out at some place like Howard Johnson's. Many of the so called hard hats, police, fire, sanitation workers, school teachers, and much of civil service, mechanics, electricians, janitors, and semi skilled workers are in this class. They look at the unemployed poor as parasitical dependents, recipients of a vast variety of massive public programs, all paid for by them, the public. They see the poor going to colleges with the waiving of admission requirements and given special financial aid. In many cases, the lower middle class were denied the opportunity of college by these very circumstances. Their bitterness is compounded by their also paying taxes for these colleges, for increased public services, fire, police, public health, and welfare. They hear the poor demanding welfare as rights. To them, this is an insult on top of injury. Seeking some meaning in life, they turn to an extreme chauvinism and become defenders of the American faith. Now they even develop rationalizations for a life of futility and frustration. It's the Red Menace. Now they are not only the most vociferous in their espousal of law and order, but ripe victims for such as demagogic George Wallace, the John Birch Society, and the Red Menace perennials. Insecure in this fast changing world, they cling to illusory fixed points, which are very real to them. Even conversation is charted toward fixing your position in the world. I don't want to argue with you. Just tell me what our flag means to you. Or what do you think of those college punks who never worked a day in their lives? They use revealing adjectives such as outside agitators or troublemakers and other when did you last beat your wife questions. On the other side, they see the middle class and the upper middle class assuming a liberal, democratic, holier than thou position and attacking the bigotry of the employed poor. They see that through all kinds of tax evasion devices, the middle and upper middle can elude their share of the tax burdens so that most of it comes back, as they see it, upon themselves, the lower middle class. They see a United States Senate in which approximately one third are millionaires and the rest, with rare exception, very wealthy. The bill requiring full public disclosure of senators' financial interests and prophetically titled Senate Bill 1993, which is probably the year it will finally be passed, is in committee. They see, and then they say to themselves, the government represents the upper class, but not us. Many of the lower middle class are members of labor unions, churches, bowling clubs, fraternal service, and nationality organizations. They are organizations and people that must be worked with as one would work with any other part of our population, with respect, understanding, and sympathy. To reject them is to lose them by default. They will not shrivel and disappear. You can't switch channels and get rid of them. This is what you have been doing in your radicalized dream world, but they are here and will be. If we don't win them, Wallace or Spiro T. Nixon will. Never doubt it that the voice may be Agnew's, but the words, the vindictive smearing, is Nixon's. There never was a vice president who didn't either faithfully serve as his superior's faithful sounding board or else be silent. Remember that even if you cannot win over the lower middle class, at least parts of them must be persuaded to where there is at least communication, then to a series of partial agreements and a willingness to abstain from hard opposition as changes take place. They have their role to play in the essential prelude of reformation in their acceptance that the ways of the past, with its promises for the future, no longer work and we must move ahead. Where we move to may not be definite or certain, but move we must. People must be reformed so they cannot be deformed into dependency and driven through desperation to dictatorship and the death of freedom. The silent majority now are hurt, bitter, suspicious, feeling rejected, and at bay. This sick condition, in many ways, is as explosive as the current race crisis. Their fears and frustrations at their helplessness are mounting to a point of a political paranoia which can demonize people to turn to the law of survival in the narrowest sense. These emotions can go either to the far right of totalitarianism or forward to Act Two of the American Revolution. The issues of 1972 would be those of 1776: no taxation without representation. To have real representation would involve public funds being available for campaign costs so that the members of the lower middle class can campaign for political office. This can be an issue for mobilization among the lower middle class and substantial sectors of the middle class. The rest of the middle class, with few exceptions, reside in suburbia, living in illusions of partial escape, being more literate. They are even more lost. Nothing seems to make sense. They thought that a split level house in the suburbs, two cars, two color TVs, country club member, country club membership, a bank account, children in good prep schools, and then in college, and they had it made. They got it, only to discover that they didn't have it. Many have lost their children. They dropped out of sight into something called the generation gap. They have seen values they held sacred sneered at and found themselves ridiculed as squares or relics of a dead world. The frenetic scene around them is so bewildering as to induce them to either drop out into a private world, the non existent past, sick with its own form of social schizophrenia, or to face it and move into action. If one wants to act, the dilemma is how and where. There is no when. With time running out, the time is obviously now. There are enormous basic changes ahead. We cannot continue or last in the nihilistic absurdities of our time where nothing we do makes sense. The scene around us compels us to look away quickly if we are to cling to any sanity. We are the age of pollution, progressively burying ourselves in our own waste. We announce that our water is contaminated by our own excrement, insecticides, and detergents, and then do nothing. Even a half witted people, if sane, would long since have done the simple and obvious: ban all detergents, develop new non polluting insecticides, and immediately build waste disposal units. Apparently, we would rather be corpses in clean shirts. We prefer a strangling ring of dirty air to a ring around the collar. Until the last, we'll be buried in bright white shirts. Our persistent use of our present insecticides may well ensure that the insects shall inherit the world. Of all the pollution around us, none compares to the political pollution of the Pentagon. From a Vietnam War simultaneously suicidal and murderous to a policy of getting out by getting in deeper and wider, to the Pentagon reports that strained even a moron's intelligence that within the next 6 months the war would be won, to destroying more bridges in North Vietnam than there are in the world, to counting and reporting the enemy dead from helicopters. Okay, Joe, we've been here for 15 minutes. Let's go back and call it 150 dead. To brutalizing our younger generation with my lace, but ignoring our own principles of the Nuremberg trials, to putting our soldiers in conditions so conducive to drugs that we stand forth as freedom's liberating force of pot. This Pentagon, whose economic waste and corruption is bankrupting our nation morally as well as economically, allows Lockheed Aircraft to put one-fourth of its production in the small Georgia country town of the late Senator Russell, a powerful man in military appropriation decisions, and then transmits its appeals for federal millions to save it from its financial fiascos. Far worse is the situation in the late Representative Mendel Rivers congressional district, he of the House Military Affairs Committee, with the phenomenal payoffs of every kind of installation for corporations vying for Pentagon gold. Even our solid state mental vice president described it in a way he thought was amusing but is tragic beyond belief to any freedom loving American. Vice President Agnew praised Mr. Rivers for his willingness to go to bat for the so called and often discredited military industrial complex, as 1,150 generals, congressmen, and defense contractors applauded in the ballroom of the Washington Hilton Hotel. Mr. Agnew said he wanted to lay to rest the ugly, vicious, dastardly rumor that Mr. Rivers, whose Charleston, South Carolina district is chock full of military installations, is trying to move the Pentagon piecemeal to South Carolina. Even when it appeared Charleston might sink into the sea from the burden, said the vice president, Mr. Rivers' response was, I regret that I have but one congressional district to my country, to give to my country. This is the Pentagon that has manufactured nearly 16,000 tons of nerve gas. Why and what for being unclear except to overkill the overkill. No one has raised the questions: who got the contracts, what it cost, where the payoffs went. Now the big question is how to dispose of it as it deteriorates and threatens to get loose among us. The Pentagon announces that the sinking of the nerve gas is safe, but from now on, they will find a safe way. The obvious American way of assuming personal responsibility for one's action is utterly ignored. Otherwise, since the Pentagon made it, it should keep it and have it all stored in the basements of the Pentagon. Or, since the president, as commander in chief of our armed forces, believed that the sinking in the ocean of the 67 tons of nerve gas was so safe, why didn't he attest to his belief by having it dumped into the waters off San Clemente, California? Either action would at least have given some hope for the nation's future. The record goes on without any deviations toward sanity. The Army chose the final day of hearings of the President's Commission investigating the National Guard killings at Kent State to announce that M16 rifles would now be issued to the National Guard. The President's Commission report is doomed not to be read until after the bowl games on New Year's Day by a president who watches football on TV the afternoon of the biggest march in history on Washington, Moratorium Day. There are our generals and their scientific gremlins who, after assurance of no radioactive menace from the atomic test in Nevada, now more than a dozen years later, have sealed off 250 square miles as contaminated with poisonous and radioactive plutonium 239. This from the
I have a
explosions.
story for you.
Huh?
I have a story for you.
Was that?
I used to work with a woman.
Hmm.
I used to work with a woman who was a college student at Kent State when the National Guard incident happened.
Yeah.
And she was on the side of the National Guard. So I'd get her talking about it and she'd be like, those damn hippies, they got what they deserved. And what was so funny about this was I worked with her at a college. She was the she was the public relations director for a college that I worked at. And I was like her assistant. So I was like, oh man, if there's ever any shenanigans on this college campus, she's gonna call Blackwater. Have them put it down. But I thought it was funny because I grew up with the narrative, one might even say the mythology, that the National Guard was evil and the college kids were pure.
Mm.
But it's interesting to see someone take the other side. And now, given things I've seen in the past like 10 years, makes me wonder. Makes me wonder if that story was really a mythology and there was more to it than just evil National Guard and righteous college students.
Yeah, the Kent State incident, I never took time to really look into it in any depth. I just kind of like, okay, there were protests and they got out of hand, and then the National Guard came in and they got out of hand, and it was probably a bunch of bad people on both sides doing really shitty things, and then it just kind of blew up. And that was kind of always the way I kind of looked at that story. I never took the time to look at it any closer than that.
Makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Your take?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my take. It's like, I don't know. I have such a hard time. I've gotten to a point where I find it very difficult to just point the finger in one direction anymore, because I've been around long enough to see that typically what's going on, there are a bunch of people making a bunch of tiny mistakes, and it just kind of compounds on top of each other, and it turns into a big fucking mess. And that's typically the way that most things go, you know. There or they do something and there's an unintended consequence, and then they're trying to plaster over the unintended consequence. And as they're plastering over that unintended consequence, a new unintended consequence pops up. And it's just like the snowball going downhill. Eventually, you've put like 500,000 band aids on a bullet wound. And it's like, where do we start repairing this? Like, how do you even get back to the source of the problem? And then how much wealth and stability does that undo in the process of trying to undo a bunch of issues that you created unintentionally? It's like, how do you get back to that process to fixing what the actual problem was without destroying thousands of lives?
Difficult task, to be sure.
Yeah. So I think one day it's either gonna have to reset itself, or somebody's actually gonna have to do the hard, like take the hard steps, and the country's gonna have to just accept it. Like, this is necessary for the well-being of your children and their children. Like, and you would think parents at some point would be like, I'll sacrifice my well-being so my children are better off. But it's like I don't know. I don't know if people have that in them anymore though.
They've definitely been led astray.
Yeah. All right. Where was I? This from the explosions in 1958. Will the safe disposition in 1970 of the nerve gas still be as safe a dozen or less years from now? One can only wonder how they will seal off some 250 miles in the Atlantic Ocean. We can assume that these same scientific gremlins will be assigned to the disposition of the thousands of tons of additional stockpiled nerve gas, of which approximately 15,000 tons are on Okinawa and to be moved to some other island. Compound this with a daily record of now we are in Cambodia, now we are out, now we are not in it, just over it with our bombers. We will not get involved there as in Vietnam, but we can't get out of Vietnam without safeguarding Cambodia. We're doing this, but really the other, with no other clue to all this madness except the half helpful comment from the White House. Don't listen to what we say, just watch what we do. Half helpful only because either statements or actions are sufficient to make us freeze into bewilderment and stunned disbelief. It is in such times that we are haunted by the old maxim, those whom the gods would destroy, they first make ludicrous. That was one long ass run on sentence, and it was ludicrous. The middle classes are numb, bewildered, scared into silence. They don't know what, if anything, they can do. This is the job for today's radical, to fan the embers of hopelessness into a flame to fight, to say you cannot cop out as have many of my generation. You cannot turn away. Look at it. Let us change it together. Look at us. We are your children. Let us not abandon each other, for then we are all lost. Together we can change it for what we want. Let's start here and there. Let's go. It is a job first of bringing hope and doing what every organizer must do with all people, all classes, places, and times. Communicate the means or tactics whereby the people can feel that they have the power to do this and that and on. To a great extent, the middle class of today feels more defeated and lost than do our poor. So you return to the suburban scene of your middle class with its variety of organizations from PTAs to League of Women Voters, consumer groups, churches, and clubs. The job is to search out the leaders in these various activities, identify their major issues, find areas of common agreement, and excite their imagination with tactics that can introduce drama and adventure into the tedium of middle class life. Tactics must begin within the experience of the middle class, accepting their aversion to, what is that? Rudeness, maybe? I think that's supposed to be rudeness. Accepting their aversion to rudeness,
I
vulgarity, and
concur. Brutus.
yeah, I think so. It's the print's all jacked up there. Rudeness, vulgarity, and conflict. Start them easy, don't scare them off. The opposition's reactions will provide the education or radicalization of the middle class. It does it every time. Tactics here, as already described, will develop in the flow of action and reaction. The chance for organization for action on pollution, inflation, Vietnam, violence, race, taxes, and other issues is all about us. Tactics such as stock proxies and others are waiting to be hurled into the attack. The revolution must manifest itself in the corporate sector by the corporations' realistic appraisal of conditions in the nation. The corporations must forget their nonsense about private sectors. It is not just that government contracts and subsidies have long since blurred the line between public and private sectors, but that every American individual or corporation is public as well as private. Public in that we are Americans and concerned about our national welfare. We have a double commitment, and corporations had better recognize this for the sake of their own survival. Poverty, discrimination, disease, crime, everything is as much a concern of the corporation as is profits. The days when corporate public relations work to keep the corporation out of controversy, days of playing it safe, of not offending Democratic or Republican customers, advertisers or associates, those days are done. If the same predatory drives for profits can be partially transmuted for progress, then we will have opened a whole new ballgame. I suggest here that this new policy will give its executives a reason for what they are doing, a chance for a meaningful life. Republicans buy sneakers too. A major battle will be pitched on quality and prices of consumer goods, targeting particularly on the massive misleading advertising campaigns, the costs of which are passed on to the consumer. It will be the people against Madison Avenue or the Battle of Bunkum Hill. Any timetable would be speculation, but the writing of middle class organization had better be on the walls by 1972. The human cry of the second revolution is one for a meaning, a purpose for life, a cause to live for, and if need be, die for. Tom Paine's words, "These are the times that try men's souls," are more relevant to part two of the American Revolution than the beginning. This is literally the revolution of the soul. The great American dream that reached out to the stars has been lost to the stripes. We have forgotten where we came from. We don't know where we are, and we fear where we may be going. Afraid we turn from the glorious adventure of the pursuit of happiness to a pursuit of an illusionary security in an ordered, stratified, striped society. Our way of life is symbolized to the world by the stripes of military force. At home, we have made a mockery of being our brother's keeper by being his jailkeeper. When Americans can no longer see the stars, the times are tragic. We must believe that it is the darkness before the dawn of a beautiful new world. We will see it when we believe it. Okay. And that's that. That's it. You know, it just strikes me so odd there at the end where he's talking about this second revolution. He's talking about gaining purpose. And I'm reading this chapter and I'm like, this chapter could have easily been written this year. Like the way he's talking about like the hopelessness for the next generation and how everything seems lost and young men seem are frustrated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like that, this whole chapter is just as it's almost like we've made a loop. We've come back around to that exact same feeling. And I remember like in when the George Floyd riots were going on, talking to my dad. I'll just do this. I was talking to my dad and he was like, yeah, he goes, I worry that these riots are going to turn in to the political violence of the like the 60s and 70s. And I was like, that's crazy. So it's like it's almost like we just keep making this loop and coming around, and which makes me think of the idea that time doesn't run on a parallel line like linearly front to back. It actually operates more like a spiral. And so it's like it layers as it passes, it crosses, and it's just kind of layers on top. And so that's why you see the reflections of history in current events.
When he was talking about Vietnam and the mixed messaging from the government, it made me think about the current war in Iran, where they're like, "We've won. We're going to finish the job.
Mm.
It's over. We're going to go back and finish the job." People are like, "What the hell is going
What is
on?"
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even where that thing, that line about like, don't listen to what we say, like, watch what we do.
Mm.
Like, Trump doesn't say that, but Trump supporters will say that.
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah, yeah, Trump, you can't take him too seriously, but just watch what he does. He'll get it done.
Well, I like how Michael Malice always said it. Is like Trump supporters take Trump seriously, but not literally. And Trump haters take Trump literally, but not seriously. And I've always liked that.
Well said. Very well said.
Yeah. Well, that's Michael
100%.
Malice's thing. That's not mine. I can't claim that. I have a feeling that that little Russian Jew would sue.
Those Russians, very litigious. There's man, I can't think of the philosopher. There's maybe a French philosopher, but he had a theory of time that actually sounded like what you were just saying about the spiral.
Mm,
And he influenced the French intellectual Gilles Deleuze, who I have not read. I've tried to read some of his stuff and it was just couldn't do it. But he wrote some stuff on cinema. I have some friends that are really into the cinema, and that's one of their influences. Ber- Bergson, maybe Henry Bergson. I don't know, but I haven't read his stuff. But from what my friends talk about his like theories of time, it sounded a lot like what you're saying.
well, I mean, that's not original to me. This is kind of like an orthodox kind of thing where the way that we talk about time and that we look at time, it's not so much linear, it's more spiral, it's more layered. And and the reason we do that is because it's like so it's like the view that God is outside of time, right? So God doesn't experience like the world the way we do. We experience the world in like a directional pattern, right? It's like following time. But time is a creation. Time isn't natural, it's a creation, just like humans are creations. So God's outside of the time. So so it's like this idea that let's say like I thought this was such a cool like thing I heard. I think it was Father Andrew Stephen Damick said this one time. He's like, but it's a I can pray today, and the grace that I'm praying for today is actually applied to me at the beginning of my life, right? Because God's not he's not restricted to time. So like upon God like looking at my life, it's like one thing. It's not like the series of events in time. It's just Tommy. And so that grace can be is like carried over.
I'm really into reading about physics,
Mhm.
and maybe after like a few years of reading about it and thinking about it, I saw some physicist in some YouTube video talking about time dilation and how like the faster you're moving, the the slower your experience of time. But then he was like, so like if you're a photon at the speed of light, time stops. And I was like, whoa, no one ever explained it like that before.
Mm.
But then I thought, well, okay, what's like sort of outside that perspective? That would be God's perspective,
Right.
where it would be completely free from even that construct of time. So in the Orthodox tradition, like before, like you're saying God's just seeing Tommy. Is God just seeing Tommy like before you're born?
Well,
Like, does
I'm
the future like
I'm just making a point that that's not like dogmatic or anything. That's not something that what I'm trying to say is like it's like there's no constraint, no time constraint on God. So when when you like if I'm praying for grace at 60 years old, if I'm praying that God has mercy on me at 60 years old, like that grace, like God experiences that just like if I were praying that like as a child. Like it's not that the time constraint, the idea of what time is, isn't like doesn't go into how God operates within our lives, right? So what I'm saying is you can look back at let's say you look back at your life and you're like, wow, these are some really hard times. I don't know how I didn't die there or how I survived this or whatever. And then you can say, well, the prayers of my future self carried me through on God's grace to the current time. You see what I'm saying? So it's not the problem that people have when talking about God is they try to humanize, like they try to put human characteristics on God. And obviously being like humans have no it's like Father Stephen Young's always talking about there's this essay called um what's it like to be a bat? He's like, obviously you can't know what it's like to be a bat because you're not a bat, you know? And so that's kind of the way it is with God. It's hard to like I can't tell you how things operate for him because I don't know what it's like to be him, right? So we try to as best we can put traits into the category of God, but it like it's not limited by the same scope of limitations that we have.
Walked in on the wife watching this television show a couple of days ago called Lestat the Vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about these gay vampires. And I was like, I wouldn't really thought anything about it, but then I was like, because we've been doing our series and
It's
I've
like
been
True
talking about this
Blood with
stuff, I was like, what kind of
rainbows.
message is this sending? Yeah, it's a really well done show because they're really classy. They're not
Mm.
like these modern, um,
No, it's not
like
like
rebellious.
one like long pride parade.
No, it's like they're like aristocrats. They're really
Oh, okay.
classy, but they're gay vampires. And well, it got me thinking about one, like what kind of messages the culture is sending. But then I was thinking about how I read Interview with the Vampire, the first book that I think is Anne Rice
Yeah.
wrote. I think that's her first book. I never saw any of the films or TV shows, but I read that book. And there's one like sort of idea in that book that made me think, oh, it'd be kind of cool to be a vampire because like they live for so long, so they get to read everything.
Mm.
And I was thinking about how Jay Dyer was talking about like when you interviewed him, he was like, knowledge won't save you.
Mm.
And how in the contemporary world, still influenced by the Enlightenment, despite all the anti-Enlightenment activity, there's this focus on knowledge. And yeah, that idea that like we're gonna unlock all the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and there's like salvation there for like the species. So when you say like I can't know what it's like to be God, like keeping all that stuff in mind, like makes me feel like that's okay. Like that's
Mm.
how it is, but also that's okay. Whereas like a few years ago, I would have been like, that's really depressing. Like I need to know what it's like. I need to
Mm.
understand it. I
Yeah.
need that knowledge.
Well, I mean, there's also another saying within the Orthodox faith that God became man so that men could become gods. So the whole idea of being a saint, right? That's like the experience of theosis in the Orthodox language, which is to be an adopted son of God and to actually like accomplish that the same level, like no, I wouldn't say same level, but the to be Christ-like, which is to be as human as possible. It's like the most human thing. It's like returning to Adam almost, becoming Adam. And so that's to be
Just
like to be
reaching the full potential of human.
yeah, to be truly human. Yeah. So, and that exists within the Orthodox like worldview of the idea that we are all called to be saints. And that's what Saint Isaac the Syrian had said, repent. It was something along, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something along the lines of like, repent every day as if it's your last day on earth. Right. And so that's like to completely turn your back on the way of the world and your fleshly desires and your passions and your sins, and to just dedicate yourself completely to God, and to do that every day. And so, and that's what leads you to sainthood and to theosis.
I'm really into structuralist um, story theory.
Mm.
Like, can't think of the guy's name. The guy who wrote A Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I made up my own like version that I call the mythos.
Mm-hmm.
And I like synthesized his work with some other archetypal story structure work, and then with like Hollywood screenwriting, um, like outline theory. In particular, his book Save the Cat. And there's this idea in Save the Cat about how like the midpoint of a film is really important. It's a massive turning point. And you can really think of like a well done film as like two stories.
Mm.
The first half and the second half are like different stories. And then it's just based on different reading I was doing and thinking about it, I call in my like model, I call the midpoint apotheosis, and the idea of like standing with the gods or like becoming a god.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I like do my interpretation of a film or a story, I always look at the midpoint. And then whatever shows up at the midpoint, I interpret as like the deity of that story.
Mm.
And then I like do my interpretation through that lens. I didn't actually do that yet for Rules for Radicals, but I bet it'll be interesting to see what Mr. Alinsky, shout out to Lucifer, puts at the midpoint of his book.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even pay attention to what it was like in the midpoint. I think it was that would have been in the probably in the chapter on tactics.
That makes sense.
I don't
He's all
know.
about those tactics.
Yeah, I think my dog's outside. I hear a dog barking outside. Hmm. Oh man! All right, I'm starting to get tired now. Goodness, I told you I shouldn't eat before doing this. I get the itis. My eyes are all heavy.
It's my fault.
No, it's not your fault. I chose to do that. I shouldn't have.
Yeah, but if I had been available earlier,
No, that's all right.
you would
That's
have
not.
not had
Yeah, but
necessarily that
if I
choice.
wouldn't have eaten, if I would have just waited, which I almost did, and I was like, no, I'll go ahead and eat. Like, we'll see. It'll be fine. And now I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm dragging ass. So,
We still brought it.
yeah, yeah, we got through it, and we're gonna do more. I guess go ahead and plug whatever you got to plug. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm sorry. My wife's at the door.
Well, the Scott Horton Academy has released the rest of Scott's course on his book Provoked,
Mm.
and I got to help out a little bit. producing that course. So I know it's good. I urge everyone to go over to Scott Horton Academy, get a lifetime membership. You'll have access to that course and Scott's course on his book, Enough Already, about the global war on terrorism, a lot of other great courses, and with more courses to be added soon.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I really need to get a subscription to that and go through all that stuff. I might.
Oh man, you'll love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I might look at doing that here pretty soon. But all right. Well, I am going to end the recording or I'm going to end up falling asleep on you here. I don't know what is going on with me. I gotta quit yawning. So,
That was a good dinner.
yeah. It was, yeah. Fried shrimp po' boy. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.